Emma Martinez stood in the staff room of the Harmony Grand Hotel, looking at herself in the small mirror on the wall. She smoothed down her black waitress uniform and tied her long dark hair into a neat bun. Her hands were shaking a little. Tonight was the biggest event of the year at the hotel, and she needed this job more than ever. "You look fine, Emma. Stop worrying," said Maria, her co-worker and only real friend at the hotel. Maria was fixing her own uniform next to her. Emma tried to smile. "I just don't want to make any mistakes tonight. Mr. Harrison said he's watching everyone closely." Mr. Harrison was the hotel manager. He was a strict man who didn't tolerate any errors from his staff. Emma had been working at the hotel for 2 years now, and she always tried her best to be perfect at her job. "You never make mistakes," Maria said, patting her shoulder. "You're the best waitress here. Everyone knows that." Emma wished that was true. She picked up her notepad and pen, ready to start the evening shift. Through the staff room door, she could already hear the sounds of the party beginning. Music played softly. People laughed and talked in loud, confident voices. The rich and famous were arriving for the annual charity ball. As Emma walked into the grand ballroom, she stopped for just a moment to take it all in. The room looked like something from a fairy tale. Huge crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, throwing sparkles of light across everything. The walls were decorated with gold and cream colors. Fresh flowers were everywhere, filling the air with sweet smells. Round tables covered with white silk tablecloths surrounded a large dance floor. And in the center of it all, on a raised stage, sat a beautiful grand piano. Emma's heart jumped when she saw the piano. It was magnificent, black and shiny, with ivory keys that seemed to glow under the stage lights. She felt a familiar ache in her chest, a feeling she always got when she saw a piano. It had been so long since she had played one. "Emma, don't just stand there. Start serving." Mr. Harrison's sharp voice cut through her thoughts. He was standing near the kitchen door, watching all the staff with his critical eyes. "Yes, sir." "Sorry, sir," Emma said quickly. She picked up a tray of champagne glasses from the service table and began moving through the growing crowd. The ballroom was filling up fast. Women wore long, expensive dresses that sparkled with jewels. Men wore perfectly fitted tuxedos. Emma recognized some faces from magazines and television. There was the mayor with his wife. Over there was a famous actress. Near the bar stood a tech billionaire she had read about in the news. Emma moved carefully between the guests, offering champagne with a polite smile. Most people took a glass without even looking at her. To them, she was invisible. Just part of the furniture. Just someone who served them drinks. "More champagne over here," called out a woman with too much makeup and a dress that probably cost more than Emma made in 6 months. "Right away, ma'am," Emma said, bringing her tray over. She had gotten used to being invisible. In a way, it made the job easier. She could move through the crowds, watch the rich people interact, and nobody paid attention to her at all. Sometimes she wondered what it would be like to be one of them. To wear a beautiful dress, to not worry about money, to be seen. But Emma had more important things to think about than fairy tale wishes. She had bills to pay, big bills. Her younger sister, Sophia, was sick. Very sick. Sophia needed treatments that cost thousands of dollars. Emma worked double shifts whenever she could. This job at the hotel. Another job at a coffee shop in the mornings. She sent every extra dollar to Sophia's medical fund. "Emma, table 7 needs more water," Maria whispered as she passed by with her own tray. "Got it," Emma replied. As she worked, Emma kept glancing at the stage. More specifically, at the piano. She couldn't help it. The piano drew her eyes like a magnet. She remembered when she used to play, before everything changed. Before her parents died in the car accident 5 years ago. Before she had to drop out of music school to take care of Sophia. Before she had to sell her own piano to pay for the first surgery. Music had been Emma's whole life once. She had started playing piano when she was 5 years old. Her mother had been a music teacher, and she had taught Emma everything. By the time Emma was 16, she was good. Really good. She had won competitions. She had been accepted to Juilliard, one of the best music schools in the world. But then the accident happened. Everything fell apart. There was no money for school. There was barely money for food. Sophia was only 15 and needed someone to take care of her. Emma had to make a choice. Music school or her sister. It wasn't really a choice at all. Now, at 28 years old, Emma served drinks to rich people and tried not to think about what might have been. But every time she saw a piano, the old dreams came back to haunt her. "Ladies and gentlemen," a voice boomed through the speakers. Emma looked up to see Richard Montgomery, the event organizer, standing on the stage with a microphone. He was a round man with a cheerful face and an expensive suit. The crowd quieted down, turning their attention to the stage. Emma stopped near the side wall, her tray balanced carefully in her hands. "Welcome, welcome to our 25th annual Harmony Grand Charity Ball," Richard said with a huge smile. The crowd applauded politely. "Tonight, we gather to raise money for children's hospitals across the state. Every dollar you donate will help sick children get the care they need." Emma felt a lump in her throat. Sophia was one of those sick children who needed help. If only these rich people knew that one of the waitresses serving them was desperately trying to save her sister's life. "And now," Richard continued, his voice rising with excitement, "I have the honor of introducing tonight's special performer. He needs no introduction. He has played for presidents and kings. His albums have sold millions of copies. He is considered one of the greatest pianists of our generation. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Victor Ashford." The crowd erupted in applause. People stood up from their tables, clapping enthusiastically. Emma clapped too, balancing her tray carefully. A man walked onto the stage, and Emma's breath caught. Victor Ashford was exactly what you would expect a world-famous pianist to look like. He was probably in his mid-40s, with silver hair swept back from his face. He wore a tailored tuxedo that fit him perfectly. He walked with confidence, with his head held high. He smiled at the crowd, but it was a cool smile. A smile that said he knew exactly how important he was. Victor gave a small bow, and the applause grew louder. He walked to the piano and sat down on the bench. He adjusted it slightly, testing the position. Then he held his hands over the keys for a moment, completely still. Emma found herself moving closer, forgetting about her job for a moment. She loved watching pianists perform, the way they connected with the instrument, the way their whole body became part of the music. Victor's hands came down on the keys, and music filled the ballroom. It was Chopin. Emma recognized it immediately. Nocturne in E-flat major, one of the most beautiful pieces ever written. Victor played it perfectly. Every note was clean and precise. His fingers moved with incredible speed and accuracy. But something was missing. Emma frowned slightly as she listened. The notes were all correct. The timing was perfect. But there was no feeling in it, no soul. It was like watching a very expensive machine play the piano instead of a human being. Beautiful, yes, but cold. Emma shook her head. Who was she to judge? Victor Ashford was famous. She was just a waitress. He played for presidents. She served champagne to drunk people. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing from his performance. The piece ended, and the crowd went wild with applause. Victor stood and bowed deeply, soaking in the admiration. Emma saw the satisfaction on his face. He loved being the center of attention. Wasn't that magnificent? Richard Montgomery said, returning to the stage. "Mr. Ashford will perform several more pieces throughout the evening. But first, please enjoy dinner and don't forget to bid generously in our silent auction." The crowd began to move again, returning to their conversations and their drinks. Emma snapped back to attention and continued serving. She had gotten distracted, and Mr. Harrison was watching. She couldn't afford to lose this job. As the evening went on, Emma kept busy. She served course after course of expensive food. She refilled wine glasses. She cleared plates. Her feet hurt in her practical black shoes, but she kept the smile on her face. Always smile. Always be polite. Always be invisible. Victor Ashford sat at a special table near the stage, surrounded by admirers. People kept coming up to him, shaking his hand, telling him how wonderful he was. He accepted their praise with that same cool smile. Emma noticed that he barely looked at the people talking to him. His eyes kept scanning the room as if looking for someone more important. At one point, Emma had to serve champagne to his table. She approached carefully, her tray steady in her hands. "Champagne, sir?" she asked quietly. Victor didn't even look at her. He just waved his hand dismissively, like she was a fly buzzing around his head. Emma moved on to the next person at the table. She was used to being ignored, but something about Victor's attitude bothered her. He seemed to think he was better than everyone else. Maybe he was more talented, but that didn't make him a better person. The ballroom had gotten more crowded as the night went on. More guests arrived. More champagne flowed. The noise level rose as people drank and laughed and talked louder and louder. Emma's tray felt heavier with each trip from the kitchen to the ballroom floor. Her feet ached, her back hurt, but she kept going, kept smiling, kept being invisible. It was nearly 10 o'clock when Richard Montgomery returned to the stage. He tapped the microphone to get everyone's attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please." His cheerful voice boomed through the speakers. "Mr. Victor Ashford has graciously agreed to perform one more piece for us before we begin our live auction. This will be his final performance of the evening, so please, let's give him your complete attention." The crowd applauded and began moving toward the stage area. People wanted good spots to watch the famous pianist perform. Emma found herself caught in the flow of people, trying to navigate through the crowd with her tray of champagne glasses. "Excuse me, pardon me," she said softly, trying to squeeze between a group of older women in glittering dresses. Victor Ashford appeared on the stage, walking with that same confident stride. He waved to the crowd, that cool smile on his face. He sat at the piano bench and adjusted it slightly. Then he cracked his knuckles, making a show of preparing for his performance. Emma had positioned herself near the left side of the stage, close to the curtain. It gave her a good view, and she was mostly out of the way of the guests. She stood still, her tray balanced perfectly on one hand, and waited for the music to begin. Victor placed his hands on the keys. The room fell silent. Emma could feel the anticipation in the air. Even the waiters and waitresses had stopped moving to watch. The first notes rang out. Rachmaninoff, Piano Concerto No. 2. Emma recognized it immediately. It was one of the most difficult and beautiful pieces in the classical piano repertoire. Her mother had loved this piece. Emma had spent 2 years learning to play it herself, back when she was still in music school. Victor played with precision and power. His fingers flew across the keys. The music swelled and crashed like ocean waves. Technically, it was flawless. But again, Emma felt that same emptiness she had noticed before. The notes were perfect, but the feeling was cold, mechanical. She was so absorbed in listening, so lost in the music and her memories of learning this piece with her mother, that she didn't notice the man beside her. He was a large man, red-faced from too much wine, gesturing wildly as he talked to his friend. His arms swung out wide as he made some point in his conversation. His elbow hit Emma's tray hard. Everything happened in slow motion. Emma felt the tray fly from her hand. She grabbed for it, but it was too late. The champagne glasses tumbled through the air. The golden liquid splashed out in an arc, catching the light from the chandeliers. Emma watched in horror as the champagne flew toward the stage, toward Victor Ashford. The champagne hit Victor's feet and legs, soaking his expensive shoes and the bottom of his tailored tuxedo pants. The glasses shattered on the stage floor with a loud crash that echoed through the ballroom. Victor's hands slammed down on the piano keys in a discordant crash. The beautiful music stopped abruptly. The room fell into shocked silence. Emma stood frozen, her empty hands still raised where the tray had been. Her face went pale. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. Victor Ashford stood up from the piano bench. His face turned bright red. His eyes found Emma immediately. The look in them was pure fury. "What have you done?" His voice was low at first, almost a whisper, but in the silent ballroom, everyone heard it clearly. "I'm so sorry, sir, I didn't mean to—" Emma started, but Victor cut her off. "You clumsy fool." His voice rose to a shout. "Do you have any idea how much these shoes cost? Do you?" He lifted one foot, showing the champagne-soaked Italian leather to the crowd. "These are custom-made. They cost more than you probably make in 6 months." Emma felt her eyes filling with tears. She blinked rapidly, trying to hold them back. "Sir, I'm truly sorry. Someone bumped me and I don't care about your excuses." Victor stepped off the stage, walking toward Emma. The crowd parted to let him through. "You are careless and incompetent. You have no business working at an establishment like this. Look at what you've done." He gestured at his wet clothes, at the broken glass on the stage, at the ruined moment. Everyone was staring. Hundreds of eyes on Emma. Some faces showed pity, others showed disgust. Many people had their phones out, probably recording the whole thing. Emma's hands shook. She felt small, smaller than she had ever felt in her life. "I'll pay for the cleaning, sir. I'll—" "Pay for it?" Victor laughed, but it was a cruel sound. "With what? Your pathetic waitress salary? Do you know who I am? I perform for presidents, for royalty. And you're nothing but a clumsy servant who can't even carry a tray properly." Each word hit Emma like a physical blow. She wanted to run. She wanted to disappear, but her feet wouldn't move. She just stood there, taking the abuse, her face burning with shame. Mr. Harrison pushed through the crowd, his face almost as red as Victor's. "Mr. Ashford, I am so sorry. This is completely unacceptable. Please allow me to—" "I want her fired," Victor said coldly, pointing at Emma. "Immediately. I won't continue my performance with such incompetent staff present." Mr. Harrison turned to Emma, and she saw no sympathy in his eyes, only anger. "Emma, what were you thinking? Do you have any idea what you've done?" "Mr. Harrison, it was an accident. Someone bumped into me." Emma tried to explain, but her manager wasn't interested in explanations. "I don't want to hear excuses." "Mister," Harrison grabbed Emma's arm. "Get down on your knees and clean this up right now, every single piece of glass, and then go to my office. We'll discuss your employment status after the event." Emma felt her knees buckle. She sank down to the floor, her black uniform skirt spreading around her. Tears finally escaped down her cheeks. She began picking up the broken glass with her bare hands, not caring if it cut her. The physical pain would be nothing compared to the humiliation she felt. "How pathetic," she heard someone in the crowd whisper. "Can you believe she did that? So careless," said another voice. "That's what happens when they hire people who don't belong in places like this," said a woman with a thick British accent. Victor stood over Emma for a moment longer, making sure everyone saw his disgust. Then he turned to address the crowd. "I apologize, ladies and gentlemen. I cannot continue my performance after such a disgraceful interruption. These people—" He waved his hand dismissively at Emma. "They have no appreciation for art, no understanding of excellence. They don't belong in the same room as civilization." The crowd murmured. Some people nodded in agreement. Others looked uncomfortable but said nothing. No one came to Emma's defense. She was just a waitress after all, just part of the help, not worth defending. Maria rushed over and knelt beside Emma. "I'll help you," she whispered. "I'm so sorry," Emma whispered back, tears streaming down her face now. "I'm so sorry." "It wasn't your fault," Maria said fiercely. "That drunk man hit your tray. I saw it. But it didn't matter whose fault it was. Emma was the one on her knees picking up broken glass while hundreds of rich people watched. She was the one who had humiliated herself in front of everyone. She was the one whose job was now at risk, and she needed this job, desperately. Sophia's next treatment was in 2 weeks. The hospital needed $3,000 up front. Emma had been saving every penny. If she lost this job, how would she pay for it? How would she help her sister? The thought spun through Emma's mind as she picked up piece after piece of broken glass. Her hand started to bleed from small cuts, but she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. Maybe if she cleaned up perfectly, maybe if she showed how sorry she was, Mr. Harrison would let her keep her job. "Emma, your hands are bleeding," Maria said with concern. "I'm fine," Emma replied, though she clearly wasn't. Mr. Harrison stood nearby, his arms crossed, his face stern. "Hurry up. We need to salvage what's left of this evening." Victor had returned to the stage, but he didn't sit at the piano. Instead, he examined his shoes with exaggerated disgust. He made sure the crowd could see how upset he was. He was performing now, Emma realized. Not music, but a show of outrage. He was making sure everyone knew how badly he had been wronged. Richard Montgomery, the event organizer, looked panicked. He spoke quietly with Victor, probably trying to convince him to continue performing. But Victor kept shaking his head, his arms crossed over his chest. Emma finally collected all the visible pieces of glass. She stood up slowly, her legs shaky, her hands stinging from the cuts. Maria stood with her, supporting her arm. "Go to the kitchen," Mr. Harrison ordered. Clean yourself up, then wait in my office. Don't leave. We'll talk after the event ends." "Yes, sir," Emma said in a small voice. She walked toward the kitchen, her head down, trying to ignore the stares and whispers that followed her. She heard fragments of conversation as she passed. So clumsy. Shouldn't have hired someone like that. Poor Mr. Ashford, his beautiful performance ruined. Emma pushed through the kitchen door and finally let herself break down. She leaned against the wall and sobbed. Great, heaving sobs that shook her whole body. Emma sat in Mr. Harrison's office for what felt like hours, though it was probably only 30 minutes. The sounds of the party continued outside. She could hear music, laughter, the clinking of glasses. Life was going on without her, just as it always did. Finally, the door opened. But it wasn't Mr. Harrison who entered. It was Maria. "Emma, you need to come out," Maria said urgently. "I'm supposed to wait here," Emma replied, not moving from the chair. Mr. Harrison said, "Forget what Mr. Harrison said. Something's happening out there." "You should see this." Emma shook her head. "I can't go back out there. Not after what happened." Maria grabbed her hand. "Trust me. Come on." Despite her reluctance, Emma let Maria pull her to her feet. They left the office and walked down the hallway toward the ballroom. Emma could hear raised voices as they got closer. Angry voices. They stopped just inside the kitchen door, where they could see into the ballroom but stay hidden in the shadows. Emma's eyes widened at what she saw. Victor Ashford was back on stage. The crowd had gathered around again. Richard Montgomery stood next to Victor, his face red and sweating. He looked stressed and worried. "Ladies and gentlemen, please, if I could have your attention." Richard spoke into the microphone, but his usual cheerful tone was gone. He sounded desperate. "We've encountered a small technical difficulty with the piano. Mr. Ashford has graciously agreed to perform one more piece once we resolve the issue." "What happened?" Emma whispered to Maria. "The piano broke," Maria whispered back. "Right in the middle of the auction. One of the strings snapped or something. It made this awful sound, and now Mr. Ashford says it's unplayable." Emma looked at the piano. From where she stood, it looked fine. But she knew that if an internal string had broken, the instrument would produce wrong notes. It would be impossible to perform on properly. Victor Ashford stood with his arms crossed, looking supremely annoyed. "I cannot play on a damaged instrument," he announced loudly, making sure everyone heard him. "This is completely unacceptable. The Harmony Grand Hotel promised me a quality piano. This is not quality. This is amateur." Mr. Harrison had appeared on stage now. He looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. "Mr. Ashford, we're working on getting our backup piano delivered immediately. It should be here within the hour." "An hour?" Victor interrupted. "You expect these distinguished guests to wait an hour?" "You expect me to wait an hour?" He shook his head in disgust. "This entire evening has been a disaster. First that incompetent waitress, and now this. I've performed at the finest venues in the world, and I've never encountered such unprofessionalism." The crowd murmured in agreement. Emma felt a fresh wave of shame. He was still blaming her, still making sure everyone remembered her mistake. Richard Montgomery tried to salvage the situation. "Perhaps we could continue with the auction while we wait for the piano. We still have many wonderful items to bid on, and all proceeds go to children's hospitals." "Nobody wants to bid on auction items," someone in the crowd called out. "We came to hear Victor Ashford play." "Yes," another person agreed. "This is ridiculous. We paid $500 per ticket." The crowd was getting restless. Some people had already started moving toward the exits. The event was falling apart. Richard looked panicked. This was his charity ball, his event that he had planned for months. Emma could see the desperation in his eyes as he tried to think of a solution. Mr. Harrison spoke quietly with the hotel's maintenance supervisor. Emma could see them gesturing at the piano, probably trying to figure out if there was any way to fix it quickly. "It's not possible," the supervisor said, loud enough for Emma to hear. "The string is completely broken. We'd need a professional piano technician, and that would take hours, maybe days, to fix properly." Victor threw his hands up in the air. "This is absurd. I'm leaving. I won't waste my time here any longer." "Please, Mr. Ashford," Richard begged. "These people came to see you perform. The children's hospitals need this money. Can't you just try to play something simple on the damaged piano?" Just to keep the guests entertained until the backup arrives? Victor looked at Richard like he had suggested something offensive. Play on a damaged piano? Do you have any idea who I am? I am Victor Ashford. I play on the finest instruments in the world. I don't play on broken pianos like some amateur street performer. The comparison stung. Emma thought about all the street performers she had seen over the years. Some of them played on old beaten-up keyboards or poorly maintained pianos, but they made beautiful music anyway, because they played with heart. With soul. With genuine love for the music. Victor didn't love music, Emma realized. He loved being famous. He loved being admired. The music was just a tool for his ego. Perhaps someone else could play? Suggested one of the guests. Just to keep us entertained while we wait? Richard's face brightened slightly. Does anyone here play piano? Anyone at all? Silence. The wealthy crowd looked at each other uncomfortably. These were not people who played their own music. They paid other people to play for them. Come on, Richard pleaded. Anyone? It doesn't have to be a professional performance. Just something to fill the time? More silence. Emma watched from the shadows of the kitchen doorway. Her fingers twitched at her sides. She knew she could play. Even on a damaged piano, she could make it work. She had played on worse instruments during her childhood. She had practiced on old pianos with broken keys and loose pedals. But after what had just happened, after the humiliation Victor had put her through, after everyone had watched her crawl on the floor picking up broken glass, there was no way she could walk out there. They would laugh at her. They would mock her. The clumsy waitress who thought she could play piano. It would be ridiculous. I can't believe this, said a woman in a diamond necklace. We came all the way here for this disaster of an evening. I'm leaving, announced a man in an expensive suit. This is a waste of time. Several other guests echoed his sentiment. People started gathering their coats and purses. The event was ending early. All of Richard's hard work, all the money that could have been raised for sick children was disappearing. Emma thought about Sophia, about all the children like her who needed help. This event was supposed to raise money for them, and it was falling apart. Emma, Maria whispered beside her. You should do it. What? Emma looked at her friend in shock. Are you crazy? You can play. You know you can. Better than that pompous jerk on the stage. Maria, they'll laugh at me. After what happened? So what if they laugh? Maria's eyes were fierce. You know what you can do. I've heard you humming complicated music while you work. I've seen you watch pianists perform with that look in your eyes. You've been hiding your talent for years. Maybe it's time to stop hiding. Emma's heart raced. The idea was terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. To walk out there in front of all those people who had just watched her be humiliated. To sit at that piano in her stained waitress uniform. To face Victor Ashford again. I can't, Emma said, shaking her head. I just can't. Then watch them all leave, Maria said, gesturing at the crowd. Watch this event fail. Watch all that money disappear. Money that could have helped kids like Sophia. That hit home. Emma looked at the crowd again, saw them filing toward the exits, saw Richard Montgomery's defeated expression, saw the beautiful piano sitting empty on the stage. Something stirred inside her. It wasn't courage, not exactly. It was something else. Maybe it was anger. Anger at Victor for being so cruel. Anger at all these rich people for looking down on her. Anger at herself for hiding who she really was for so long. Or maybe it was just the memory of her mother who had taught her that music wasn't about being perfect. It was about telling a story, about sharing something true and real with people. If I do this, Emma said slowly, I'll probably get fired. You're probably getting fired anyway, Maria pointed out. At least this way you'll go out doing something you love. Emma took a deep breath. Then another. Her hands were shaking again, but this time it wasn't from fear alone. It was from anticipation. From the desperate need to play music again after 5 long years. Okay, she whispered. Okay, I'll do it. That's my girl, Maria squeezed her hand. Show them what you've got. Emma stepped out of the shadows. She walked through the ballroom, her black waitress uniform standing out among all the evening gowns and tuxedos. People noticed her immediately. She saw their expressions change from confusion to recognition to disbelief.
Is that the waitress from before?
What is she doing? Oh my God, this is going to be embarrassing. Emma heard the whispers but kept walking, one foot in front of the other, toward the stage, toward the piano, toward the terrifying moment that might change everything, or might be the final humiliation of a very bad night. Richard Montgomery saw her approaching. His eyes widened. "Miss, this isn't the time." "I can play," Emma said, her voice stronger than she felt. "Until your backup piano arrives." "I can play something." Richard looked confused. But you're a waitress, yes. I'm also a musician, or I was. I can play the damaged piano. I can work around the broken string." Victor Ashford laughed. It was a loud, mocking laugh that echoed through the ballroom. "Oh, this is too perfect. The clumsy waitress thinks she can play piano? This should be entertaining." Emma sat at the piano, her eyes still closed, her fingers resting on the cool ivory keys. She could feel hundreds of eyes on her. She could almost hear their thoughts. Who does this waitress think she is? This is going to be a disaster. Someone should stop her before she embarrasses herself further. But Emma didn't open her eyes yet. She needed one more moment, one more breath, one more second to remember who she used to be before life had forced her to become someone else. She thought about her mother, about sitting beside her on a piano bench just like this one when she was 7 years old, about her mother's gentle hands guiding her fingers to the right keys, about the way her mother's face would light up when Emma played something beautiful. "Music is not about the notes, Mija," her mother used to say. "Music is about the feeling behind the notes. You can play every note perfectly and still play nothing at all, or you can play with mistakes but with heart, and you will touch people's souls." Emma opened her eyes. She looked at the keys in front of her. In her mind, she could hear the broken string. She knew which note it would be. She knew how to work around it, how to adjust the piece she was going to play so that the broken string wouldn't matter. The crowd had gone quiet. They were waiting, some with curiosity, most with cruel anticipation, ready to see her fail so they could laugh and feel superior. Victor Ashford stood at the side of the stage, a smirk on his face. He whispered something to the woman beside him, and they both laughed. Emma saw it from the corner of her eye. She turned slightly on the bench to face the crowd. She knew she should say something. Introduce herself. Explain what she was going to play. But words felt impossible right now. Her throat was tight with emotion. "Well," Victor called out, "are you going to play, or are you just going to sit there wasting everyone's time?" More nervous laughter from the crowd. Emma turned back to the piano. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against her legs, trying to steady them. She couldn't remember the last time she had been this afraid. Maria stood near the kitchen door, her hands clasped together like she was praying. She gave Emma a small nod of encouragement. "You can do this," her eyes seemed to say. Emma placed her hands over the keys again. She took one final deep breath, and then she began to play. The first notes were soft, gentle, a simple melody that seemed to float through the air like a whisper. Emma had chosen to play an original composition, something she had written during her last year of music school. It was called Morning After Rain, and she had composed it the day after her mother's funeral, when she had been too sad to speak but needed to express what she was feeling. The melody was simple at first, but it had depth. It had meaning. Each note was chosen carefully, deliberately. This wasn't about showing off technical skill. This was about telling a story, about sharing a feeling. The crowd grew quieter. The mocking smiles began to fade. People who had been looking at their phones put them down. Something in the music caught their attention. Emma's fingers moved across the keys with a grace she had almost forgotten she possessed. The muscle memory was still there, buried under 5 years of waitressing and worrying and surviving. Her hands remembered what to do, even if her mind was filled with doubt. She worked around the broken string beautifully. When she needed that note, she played a different one, adjusting the harmony so smoothly that most people probably didn't even notice. This was the skill her mother had taught her: adaptation, creativity, finding beauty even in imperfection. The music grew stronger. The gentle melody became more complex. Emma added layers of harmony, building the piece slowly, like constructing a building one brick at a time. Her left hand created a foundation while her right hand danced above it, telling the story. She wasn't thinking about the crowd anymore. She wasn't thinking about Victor or Mr. Harrison or losing her job. She was thinking about her mother, about Sophia in the hospital, about all the dreams she had given up, about the pain of losing her parents, about the weight of responsibility that had fallen on her shoulders when she was just 23 years old. All of it went into the music. Every emotion, every memory, Every tear she had cried alone in her tiny apartment. Every moment she had stood over her mother's piano before selling it, saying goodbye to her dreams. The music swelled. Emma leaned into the piano, her whole body becoming part of the performance. This was what Victor had been missing. This connection. This vulnerability. This willingness to share not just technical skill but actual feeling. In the crowd, people had stopped whispering. They stood completely still, listening. Some of them had their hands over their hearts. Others had tears forming in their eyes, though they didn't understand why. The music was reaching them in a place beyond words, beyond logic. Victor Ashford's smirk had disappeared. He stood frozen, his arms no longer crossed, his expression unreadable. He was listening. Really listening. The mayor's wife wiped a tear from her cheek. The drunk man who had bumped Emma's tray earlier stood with his mouth slightly open, completely sober now in the presence of real beauty. Even Mr. Harrison, who had been ready to fire her, looked stunned. Emma played on. The music moved through different emotions: sadness, hope, determination, love. It was the story of her life in musical form, the piece her mother had helped her start, that Emma had finished alone after her mother's death. She reached the broken section of the composition, the part that had always represented the moment when everything fell apart. Her fingers flew across the keys faster now, more urgently. The notes tumbled over each other like falling water. This was the difficult part. Technically complex and emotionally raw. Emma didn't play it perfectly. Her fingers stumbled slightly on one run. She missed a note and had to recover quickly. But it didn't matter. The imperfections made it more real, more human, more honest. Victor's performances had been flawless, but they had been empty. Emma's performance had mistakes, but it had soul. She moved into the final section of the piece. The resolution. This part was about finding peace after loss, about learning to live with pain, about choosing to keep going even when everything seems impossible. The music became gentler again, softer, like a lullaby or a prayer. Emma thought about Sophia, about how she would go to the hospital tomorrow as she did every day and sit beside her sister's bed, about how Sophia would ask her if she had played any music lately, and for the first time in 5 years, Emma would be able to say yes. The final notes came, soft as snowfall. Gentle as a mother's kiss goodnight. Emma held the last chord, letting it ring through the ballroom, letting it fade naturally rather than cutting it off. Then silence, complete and total silence. Emma sat with her hands still on the keys, her eyes closed, her heart full. She had done it. She had played music again. Whatever happened next, no one could take this moment away from her. The silence stretched on. Emma began to worry. Maybe it had been terrible. Maybe they were all too shocked by how bad it was to even respond. Maybe the applause started. It began with one person, then two. Then suddenly the entire ballroom erupted in applause. Not polite, obligatory applause. Real applause. Enthusiastic, genuine appreciation. Emma opened her eyes and turned around on the piano bench. The crowd was standing. All of them. A standing ovation. People were clapping so hard their hands must have hurt. Some were wiping tears from their eyes. Others were smiling with genuine joy. "Bravo!" someone shouted. "Magnificent," called another voice. Emma stood up slowly, not quite believing what she was seeing. These were the same people who had laughed at her minutes ago. The same people who had watched her crawl on the floor picking up broken glass. The same people who had seen her as nothing but a clumsy servant. But now they saw her, really saw her, not as a waitress but as a person, as an artist, as someone who had just shared something beautiful with them. The applause continued. Emma felt tears running down her cheeks, but these were different tears than before. These were tears of relief, of joy, of release. Maria was jumping up and down near the kitchen door, clapping wildly, her own face wet with tears. She had believed in Emma when no one else did. Richard Montgomery rushed onto the stage, his face transformed from stress to elated. "Ladies and gentlemen, wasn't that absolutely incredible?" The crowd roared in agreement. "I think we've just discovered a hidden treasure right here in the Harmony Grand Hotel." More applause. More cheers. Emma stood there overwhelmed, not knowing what to do with her hands or where to look. "What's your name, dear?" Richard asked, holding the microphone toward her. "Emma," she said softly. "Emma Martinez. Emma Martinez, everyone," Richard announced. The crowd applauded again. "Emma, that was one of the most moving performances I've ever witnessed." Where did you train? Emma's voice was shaky. I studied at the Manhattan School of Music before I had to leave. Well, their loss is clearly our gain tonight, Richard said warmly. That was extraordinary. Truly extraordinary. Emma looked out at the crowd. Most faces showed genuine admiration now. But there were others. The woman in the diamond necklace looked annoyed, as if Emma had somehow tricked them all. A few of the older men seemed confused, unable to reconcile the waitress they had ignored with the musician they had just heard. And then there was Victor Ashford. Emma sat at the piano again, her hands trembling slightly. The crowd had settled back into their seats waiting for her second performance. The energy in the room had completely changed. Where there had been mockery and cruelty before, now there was anticipation and genuine interest. She looked at the keys, thinking about what to play. Her first piece had been personal, emotional, raw. Should she play something similar? Or should she show them what she could really do technically? Emma closed her eyes and made a decision. She would play something that combined both. Something that would show her technical skill while still maintaining the emotional depth that had moved them the first time. She chose Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata third movement. It was one of the most technically difficult pieces in the classical repertoire. Fast, complex, demanding. But it was also full of passion and fire, and Emma knew it by heart. She had performed it for her final exam at the Manhattan School of Music, right before everything in her life had fallen apart. Her mother used to say that Beethoven wrote this movement when he was angry, frustrated with his deafness, with his isolation, with the unfairness of life. He poured all that rage and pain into the music, creating something fierce and beautiful. Emma could relate to that. She had her own rage, her own pain, her own frustration with the unfairness of life. She placed her fingers on the keys and began. The first notes came out like lightning. Fast, sharp, precise. Her right hand flew across the keys in rapid arpeggios, while her left hand provided powerful bass notes. The broken string was in a register she could mostly avoid in this piece, and when she did need it, she made tiny adjustments that were nearly invisible. The crowd gasped. This was completely different from her first performance. Where that piece had been gentle and emotional, this one was fierce and technical. Emma's fingers moved so fast they were almost a blur. The notes cascaded like a waterfall, each one perfectly placed, perfectly timed. But there was still feeling behind it. Emma didn't just play the notes mechanically. She felt them. She let the anger she had been holding inside for 5 years flow through her fingers. Anger at her parents for dying. Anger at the drunk driver who killed them. Anger at the universe for making her choose between her dreams and her sister. Anger at Victor Ashford for his cruelty. Anger at all these rich people who had treated her like she was invisible. All of it went into the music. The sonata was Beethoven's rage, but Emma made it her own rage too. The difficulty of the piece was evident. There were moments that would challenge even professional pianists. Rapid scales in both hands, complex rhythms, dramatic jumps across the keyboard, and Emma played it all, working around the damaged piano with such skill that most people didn't even realize the instrument was broken. Victor Ashford watched from the side of the stage, his expression shifting from shock to something else. Something that looked almost like fear. He was recognizing something in Emma's playing. A level of natural talent that couldn't be taught, the kind of gift that came along once in a generation. Emma hit the climax of the movement. The music was violent now, almost aggressive. Her whole body moved with the playing. She leaned into the strong chords, pulled back for the soft moments. She was no longer just playing the piano. She had become the music. Sweat formed on her forehead. Her hands ached from the speed and intensity. The cuts from the broken glass stung as she stretched her fingers across the keys. But she didn't slow down. She couldn't. The music had taken control, and she was just the vessel through which it flowed. The crowd sat mesmerized. Some people leaned forward in their seats as if trying to get closer to the music. Others sat back, overwhelmed by the intensity. This wasn't background music for a pleasant evening. This was art. Raw, powerful, consuming art. Emma moved into the final section of the movement. The tempo increased even more, if that was possible. The notes came faster and faster, building to an impossible peak. Her fingers were on fire. Her arms burned with the effort. But she pushed through, giving everything she had. The final chord came crashing down. Emma struck the keys with all her remaining strength, holding the chord, letting it ring through the ballroom like a battle cry. Then silence. Emma sat frozen, Her hands still on the keys, her chest heaving as she tried to catch her breath. Sweat dripped down her face. Her whole body shook from the exertion and the emotional release. The silence lasted 3 seconds, 4, 5. Then the ballroom exploded. The applause was deafening. People jumped to their feet, clapping and shouting. Some were whistling. Others were pounding their tables. It was chaos. Beautiful, appreciative chaos. Bravo! Someone screamed. Incredible! Shouted another voice. Emma turned around on the bench, shocked by the response. The entire crowd was standing again, applauding even more enthusiastically than after the first piece. Some people had tears streaming down their faces. Others looked stunned, like they couldn't quite believe what they had just witnessed. Even the waitstaff had stopped working. They stood along the walls, clapping with genuine pride. Maria was crying openly, not bothering to wipe her tears away. Richard Montgomery rushed onto the stage, his eyes wide with excitement. Ladies and gentlemen, Emma Martinez! The crowd roared. I have been organizing events for 25 years, and I have never seen anything like this. More applause. More cheers. Emma stood up from the piano bench, her legs unsteady. She felt dizzy. Whether from the performance or the reaction or both, she couldn't tell. Where have you been hiding? Richard asked her, still holding the microphone. How is someone with your talent working as a waitress? Emma's voice was barely audible. Life happens. Circumstances change. Well, circumstances are about to change again, Richard declared. He turned to the crowd. I don't know about all of you, but I think we've just witnessed the discovery of the decade. The crowd agreed enthusiastically. People were already pulling out their phones, not to mock Emma this time, but to capture this moment. Some were making calls. Others were typing furiously, probably sending messages to friends about what they were witnessing. Emma noticed a woman in the front row recording on her phone. Next to her, a man was live streaming to social media. This moment was being shared with the world in real time. Tomorrow, people everywhere would see the video of the waitress who could play like a virtuoso. The thought should have terrified Emma, but she felt strangely calm. She had spent 5 years hiding, 5 years pretending to be someone she wasn't, and in these few minutes on stage she had finally shown her true self. Whatever came next, at least she had done that. Victor Ashford slowly walked onto the stage. The crowd quieted down, curious about what the famous pianist would say. Victor approached Emma, and for a moment, they just looked at each other. Up close, Emma could see that Victor's confident mask had completely crumbled. He looked humbled, unsettled, like someone who had just realized something important about himself and didn't like what he saw. Miss Martinez, Victor said quietly. His voice was different now. No arrogance, no cruelty, just a tired man speaking to another human being. I owe you an apology. The crowd leaned forward, straining to hear. I treated you terribly tonight, Victor continued. I was cruel and dismissive. I judged you based on your uniform, your job, your appearance. I never considered that you might be. He paused, struggling with the words. That you might be more talented than me. The crowd gasped. For Victor Ashford to admit such a thing publicly was unprecedented. His entire career was built on his reputation as the best, and here he was, acknowledging that a waitress had just outplayed him. Emma didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to accept his apology graciously. Another part of her was still angry about how he had treated her, about how he had made her feel worthless in front of hundreds of people. You have a gift, Victor said, his voice getting stronger. A real gift. The kind that can't be taught. I've spent 40 years perfecting my technique, studying with the best teachers in the world, performing on the finest stages. But what you just did, that came from somewhere deeper. That came from the soul. He turned to face the crowd, speaking louder now. I played Rachmaninoff perfectly tonight. Every note was correct. Every rhythm was precise. But it was empty. It was mechanical. And I didn't even realize it until I heard this young woman play. She showed me what I've been missing, what I've lost somewhere along the way. The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. This was a side of Victor Ashford they had never seen. The arrogant maestro was admitting his flaws in front of everyone. Victor turned back to Emma. I don't know your story. I don't know why you're working as a waitress instead of playing Carnegie Hall. But I know you belong on stage, not serving people, playing for them. Emma's eyes filled with tears again. After all the cruelty, after all the humiliation, Here was Victor Ashford, the man who had destroyed her evening, now advocating for her. It was too much. Too overwhelming. "Thank you," she managed to whisper. A woman pushed through the crowd and approached the stage. She was perhaps 60 years old, elegantly dressed with silver hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. Emma recognized her from earlier in the evening. She had been sitting at one of the VIP tables. "Excuse me," the woman said, her voice carrying authority. The energy in the ballroom had completely transformed. What had started as an elegant but somewhat cold charity event had become something electric, alive, and genuinely emotional. People who had arrived expecting a routine evening of champagne and polite applause had witnessed something they would talk about for years to come. Emma stood at the side of the stage, still trying to process everything that had just happened. Maria stayed close to her, running interference with all the people trying to approach them. Business cards kept appearing in Emma's hands: music producers, talent agents, arts administrators, wealthy patrons. Everyone wanted to be connected to her story now. "Emma, there's a reporter from the Times here," Maria whispered. "She wants to interview you." Emma looked at the woman Maria was indicating. She was young, probably in her late 20s, with a notebook in hand and an eager expression. Emma had never been interviewed before. The thought terrified her. "I don't know what to say," Emma admitted. "Just tell the truth," Maria encouraged her. "Your story is powerful enough on its own." The reporter approached with a friendly smile. "Miss Martinez, I'm Jennifer Torres from the New York Times. That was an incredible performance. Would you mind if I asked you a few questions?" Emma nodded, her throat suddenly dry. The New York Times, this was real. This was actually happening. "How long have you been playing piano?" Jennifer asked, her pen ready. "Since I was 5 years old. My mother taught me. She was a music teacher." "Was?" Emma's voice became quieter. "She passed away 5 years ago. Car accident. My father too." Jennifer's expression softened. "I'm so sorry. Is that why you stopped pursuing music professionally?" Emma nodded. "I had a scholarship to Juilliard. But my younger sister, Sophia, was only 15. She needed someone to take care of her, and then she got sick. Cancer. The medical bills were overwhelming. I had to make a choice." "So you gave up your dreams to save your sister," Jennifer said, writing quickly. "It wasn't giving up," Emma said firmly. "It was choosing what mattered most. Sophia's my family. She's all I have left. Music is important, but she's more important," Jennifer smiled. "That's beautiful. And now, after 5 years away from music, you just played 2 incredible pieces in front of all these people. How does that feel?" Emma thought about the question. How did it feel? Like breathing after holding her breath for 5 years. Like waking up from a long, exhausting dream. Like coming home to a place she thought she'd lost forever. "It feels like I found a part of myself I thought was dead," Emma said honestly. Jennifer wrote down her words, then looked up with genuine warmth in her eyes. "I think your story is going to inspire a lot of people, Miss Martinez. Thank you for sharing it with me." As Jennifer walked away, Emma saw more people watching her, but their expressions had changed. Earlier in the evening, when they had noticed her at all, they had seen only a waitress. Someone to serve them. Someone beneath their notice. Now they looked at her with respect. With interest. With admiration. The woman in the diamond necklace who had complained about leaving earlier approached Emma hesitantly. "Miss Martinez, I just wanted to say, your performance was extraordinary. Truly moving." Emma recognized her as one of the people who had laughed when she first offered to play, but she kept her voice polite. "Thank you. I'm actually on the board of the Metropolitan Arts Foundation," the woman continued. "We support emerging artists. I'd love to discuss potential opportunities with you. Perhaps a grant or sponsorship." "That's very kind of you," Emma said, taking the woman's offered business card. The woman leaned in closer, lowering her voice. "I must apologize for my behavior earlier. When you first approached the stage, I judged you unfairly. Based on your uniform, your position, I was wrong to do that." Emma appreciated the apology, even if it had only come after she proved her worth. "We all make judgments sometimes," she said diplomatically. "You're very gracious," the woman said. "More gracious than I deserve." She squeezed Emma's hand briefly before walking away. Similar scenes played out over the next several minutes. People who had ignored Emma or laughed at her now approached to apologize, to praise her, to offer help. Some seemed genuinely remorseful. Others just wanted to be associated with her success. Emma accepted all of it with as much grace as she could manage, though part of her felt exhausted by the attention. The drunk man who had bumped into her tray earlier pushed through the small crowd around Emma. He looked sober now, his red face pale with embarrassment. "Miss, I need to apologize," he said, his words slightly slurred but sincere. "I'm the one who hit your tray. It was my fault you spilled that champagne. You got blamed for my mistake and I should have spoken up. I was too drunk and too cowardly to admit it. I'm sorry." Emma had wondered if anyone would acknowledge that truth. She was glad someone finally did. "Thank you for saying that. It took courage." "Not as much courage as you showed tonight," the man replied, "getting up on that stage after everything that happened. That was real bravery." As he walked away, Emma felt Maria squeeze her arm. "See, the truth is coming out. People are seeing what really happened." Richard Montgomery returned to the stage to begin the live auction. "Ladies and gentlemen, I know we're all still buzzing from those magnificent performances, but we have important work to do. Our charity auction awaits, and every dollar raised tonight goes directly to children's hospitals across the state." The crowd settled into their seats, but the energy remained high. People seemed more generous now, more open-hearted. Emma's performances had reminded them why they were there, to help sick children. Children like Sophia. The auction items started simple. A weekend at a luxury resort went for $8,000. Courtside tickets to see the Knicks went for $12,000. A private dinner with a celebrity chef went for $15,000. But then the amounts started climbing. A sculpture by a famous artist that was expected to sell for $20,000 went for $45,000. The crowd was feeling generous, inspired. Emma's story had touched something in them, opened their wallets wider than usual. Emma watched from the side of the stage, amazed at how much money was being raised. Each bid represented treatments for sick children, hospital equipment, research funding, lives being saved. "Ladies and gentlemen, our next item is very special," Richard announced. "A private piano lesson with Victor Ashford himself. Usually Mr. Ashford doesn't offer private lessons at any price. But tonight, moved by the spirit of this extraordinary evening, he's agreed to auction one lesson to the highest bidder." The crowd murmured with excitement. Victor stood and waved, managing a small smile. "Shall we start the bidding at $5,000? Richard suggested. $10,000. Someone called out immediately. $15,000. $20,000. The bids came fast. Emma watched in amazement as the amount climbed higher and higher. $30,000. $40,000. $50,000. Finally, at $65,000, the bidding stopped. An older gentleman with gray hair had won the lesson. He looked pleased with himself. But then Victor stood up and approached the microphone. "If I may make a suggestion," he said to the crowd. "What if instead of one private lesson I offer a series of masterclasses at the hospital itself? For young patients who love music. Free of charge, of course, and this gentleman's generous $65,000 donation can go directly to the hospital's music therapy program." The crowd erupted in applause. The gentleman who had won the bid stood and nodded his agreement. Victor was making a public commitment to give back, inspired by the evening's events. Furthermore, Victor continued, clearly getting into the spirit of the moment, "I'd like to challenge everyone here. Let's make this the most successful charity ball in the event's 25-year history. I will personally match every donation made tonight, dollar for dollar." The crowd gasped. That could mean hundreds of thousands of dollars, possibly millions. Victor Ashford was one of the wealthiest musicians in the world. His offer was staggering. "Victor, that's incredibly generous," Richard said, looking stunned. "It's the least I can do," Victor replied. He glanced at Emma. "I was reminded tonight what music is really for. It's not for ego. It's not for fame. It's for touching people's hearts, for making the world a little better. If my money can help sick children, then that's how it should be used." More applause. Emma felt tears forming again. She had cried more tonight than she had in the past year. But these were good tears. Healing tears. The auction continued with renewed energy. People bid aggressively, generously, knowing their donations would be doubled by Victor's matching pledge. A vintage wine collection went for $90,000. A yacht charter went for $120,000. A rare painting went for $250,000. By the time the auction ended, they had raised over $2 million. With Victor's matching donation, That meant $4 million for children's hospitals. Richard Montgomery could barely contain his excitement. Ladies and gentlemen, in 25 years of hosting this event, we have never raised this much money. This is historic, and we owe it all to the incredible spirit of this evening. The crowd stood and applauded. Emma knew they were applauding themselves, their own generosity, but she also knew her performance had sparked something in them. Emma woke up the next morning in her tiny apartment, and for a moment she thought the previous night had been a dream. But then she saw the stack of business cards on her nightstand, the bandages on her hands from the broken glass, Victor Ashford's check for $50,000 sitting on her dresser. It had all been real. She picked up her phone and saw dozens of missed calls and messages. Her voicemail was full. Her social media accounts, which she rarely used, had exploded with notifications. The video of her performance had gone viral overnight. Emma sat on the edge of her bed scrolling through the messages. There were requests for interviews from major news outlets, performance offers from venues across the country, messages from people claiming to be long-lost family members or old friends. It was overwhelming, but the message that made her heart skip a beat was from the hospital. She opened it with shaking hands, fearing bad news about Sophia. Instead, it was good news. Someone had anonymously paid Sophia's medical bills in full, not just the current bills, but advance payment for the next year of treatments. Emma knew immediately who had done it. Catherine Blackwell from the Steinway Foundation had promised to help, and she had moved quickly. Emma felt tears of gratitude sliding down her cheeks. She got dressed quickly and headed to the hospital, just as she did every morning before her coffee shop shift. But today was different. Today she had news. Today she had hope. Sophia was awake when Emma entered her hospital room. She was 15 years old but looked younger, her face thin from the illness and treatments. Still, she smiled when she saw her sister. "Emma, I was just watching a video of you." "You're famous." Emma laughed. "I'm not famous. I just played piano at an event. An event where you destroyed some arrogant jerk who was mean to you and then everyone realized you're amazing," Sophia corrected her, holding up her phone. "There are like a million videos of it online. Everyone's talking about the mystery waitress pianist." Emma sat on the edge of Sophia's bed. "I have something to tell you." She explained everything. The charity event, the humiliation, the broken piano, the decision to play, the performances, Victor's apology and generous donation, Catherine Blackwell's offer of support, all the opportunities that were suddenly appearing. Sophia listened with wide eyes, occasionally interrupting with excited questions. When Emma finished, Sophia threw her thin arms around her sister's neck. "This is the best news ever. You're going to play music again. Really play like you were meant to. More importantly," Emma said, pulling back to look at her sister, "your medical bills are paid. For the next year at least. Maybe longer. You can get all the treatments you need without me worrying about money." Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "Emma, I'm so sorry you had to give up music for me. I've always felt so guilty." "Stop," Emma interrupted firmly. "I made a choice. The right choice. You're my sister. You're my family. I would do it again 1,000 times. But now maybe I can have both. Maybe I can take care of you and play music. Maybe I don't have to choose anymore." They sat together for a long time, holding hands, both crying and laughing at once. A nurse came in to check on Sophia and smiled at the scene. "You're the pianist from the video, aren't you?" The nurse asked Emma. "We've all been watching it this morning." "You're incredible." Emma blushed. "Thank you." "Music therapy is so important for our young patients," the nurse continued. "What you did last night, raising all that money for children's hospitals, that's going to help kids like Sophia all over the state." After the nurse left, Emma stayed with Sophia for another hour, talking about the future. About performances Emma might do, about Sophia getting better, about the dreams that suddenly seemed possible again. When Emma finally left the hospital, she felt lighter than she had in 5 years. The weight of impossible choices had lifted. She still had challenges ahead, but now she had support. She had options. She had hope. Her phone rang. It was Catherine Blackwell from the Steinway Foundation. "Emma, good morning. I hope you don't mind me calling so early. I wanted to discuss next steps with you." "Not at all," Emma said. "And thank you for paying Sophia's bills. I don't know how to thank you enough." "That's what we do," Catherine said warmly. "Now let's talk about your career. I've been making some calls this morning. There's significant interest in you from the classical music world, but we need to be strategic. We need to build your comeback carefully. They talked for half an hour. Catherine explained that she had already lined up several opportunities. A small recital at a prestigious music venue in 3 weeks, an audition for a major symphony orchestra, a potential recording contract with a classical music label. Everything was moving fast, but Catherine assured her they would take it step by step. The first priority is getting you back into practice mode, Catherine said. Victor Ashford called me this morning. He's serious about offering you his studio in the Catskills. I think you should take him up on it. You need space to rebuild your technique and prepare properly. I will, Emma agreed. I'll call him today. Good, and Emma? One more thing. The video of your performance has been viewed over 5 million times. News outlets want interviews. Social media influencers want to feature your story. We need to manage this carefully. I'm going to connect you with a publicist who specializes in classical musicians. She'll help you navigate all this attention. After hanging up with Catherine, Emma called Victor Ashford's number, which he had given her the night before. His assistant answered and immediately transferred her to Victor. Emma, I was hoping you'd call. Have you seen the news this morning? Some of it, Emma admitted. It's a bit overwhelming. I imagine it is, Victor said sympathetically. Listen, I meant what I said about the studio. My assistant will send you all the details, but essentially, you can move in whenever you're ready. There's a guest house on the property fully furnished. You can stay there rent-free while you practice and prepare for your comeback. That's incredibly generous, Emma said, but I can't just leave Sophia. She needs me here. Of course, Victor said. I understand completely. But the offer stands whenever you're ready to use it. Even if it's just for a few days at a time, you need space to practice without distractions. They talked for a few more minutes before ending the call. Emma felt strange talking so casually with Victor Ashford, the man who had humiliated her just 24 hours ago. But he seemed genuinely remorseful, genuinely trying to make amends. Emma's phone rang again. This time it was Maria. Emma, have you seen Twitter? You're trending. A waitress pianist is everywhere. Emma pulled up social media and saw that Maria was right. Videos of her performance were everywhere. Some people were calling her an inspiration. Others were criticizing Victor for his initial behavior. There were think pieces about class and judgment. Some people had even started a fundraiser for Sophia's continued medical care, not knowing it had already been covered. This is crazy, Emma said to Maria. Yesterday I was invisible. Today everyone's talking about me. That's how the internet works, Maria laughed. But seriously, Emma, your story is touching people. Not just music lovers, but regular people. Single parents working multiple jobs. People who gave up dreams for family. People who feel invisible. You're representing something bigger than just music. Emma hadn't thought about it that way. She had just played piano. But Maria was right. Her story resonated because it was a story many people could relate to. The struggle of choosing between dreams and responsibilities. The feeling of being overlooked or dismissed. The courage it takes to show your true self. The hotel called me this morning, Maria added. They want both of us to come in. I think they're going to offer you that promotion Mr. Harrison mentioned, and they want to apologize more formally. I don't want to work there anymore, Emma said honestly, not after everything that happened. I know, Maria said, but you should go anyway. Hear what they have to say. You don't have to accept anything. But closure might be good. Emma agreed to meet Maria at the hotel that afternoon. First, she had her shift at the coffee shop. She couldn't just abandon that job, even with all these new opportunities emerging. She had bills to pay today. Even if the future looked brighter, her shift at the coffee shop was surreal. Customers kept recognizing her from the viral video. Some asked for autographs. Others wanted photos. Her manager, a kind older woman named Patricia, pulled her aside mid-shift. Emma, I saw that video. Why didn't you tell me you could play like that? Emma shrugged. It never came up. And I haven't played in years. I didn't think it mattered. Of course it matters, Patricia said. You have a gift. A real gift. Are you going to pursue it now? I think so, Emma said. I'm still figuring everything out. But I can't keep working 2 jobs and take care of Sophia and restart a music career. Something has to change. Patricia smiled. I understand. And when you're ready to leave this job, you leave with my blessing. But until then, you're still making coffee. Table 4 needs a refill. Emma laughed and got back to work. It felt good to have this normal moment in the middle of all the chaos. Pouring coffee, taking orders, being regular Emma for a few more hours. But even here, things were different. Customers treated her differently, with respect, with interest. 3 months had passed since that fateful night at the Harmony Grand Hotel. 3 months that had transformed Emma's life in ways she never could have imagined. She stood now in the elegant dressing room of Carnegie Hall, one of the most prestigious concert venues in the world, looking at her reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back at her barely resembled the exhausted waitress in a stained uniform from that night. Tonight, Emma wore a floor-length emerald green gown that fit perfectly. Her hair was professionally styled. Her hands, no longer bearing scars from broken glass, rested calmly at her sides, but her eyes were the same, nervous but determined. "You look beautiful, Emma," Sophia said from her wheelchair nearby. She had gained weight since starting the new treatment protocol. Her cheeks had color. Her eyes had light. She wasn't cured yet, but she was getting better, really getting better. "I look terrified," Emma corrected with a nervous laugh. "That too," Sophia agreed with a grin, "but mostly beautiful." There was a knock on the dressing room door. Maria poked her head in. "Emma, there are people here who want to wish you luck before the show." Emma nodded, and Maria opened the door wider. Catherine Blackwell entered first, looking elegant as always. "Emma, darling, how are you feeling?" Catherine asked, taking Emma's hands in hers. "Like I might throw up," Emma admitted. Catherine laughed. "That's perfectly normal. Every great performer feels nervous before a major debut. It means you care. It means it matters." Behind Catherine came an unexpected visitor. Victor Ashford. Emma had spent 2 weeks at his studio in the Catskills practicing intensively. He had visited several times, offering advice, sharing techniques, treating her not as a student but as an equal. Their relationship had evolved into something like friendship, built on mutual respect and a shared love of music. "Emma," Victor said warmly, "I wanted to tell you something before you go on stage. What you're about to do tonight is important, not just for your career, but for everyone who's ever been told they don't belong, everyone who's been judged unfairly, everyone who's given up dreams and wondered if they could ever get them back. You're living proof that it's possible." Emma felt tears threatening her carefully applied makeup. "Don't make me cry right before I perform," Victor smiled. "Then I'll save the emotional speech for after. Just know that I'm proud of you, and I'm sorry it took your courage to teach me humility." He left to take his seat in the audience. Catherine followed shortly after, reminding Emma that the Steinway Foundation's entire board was present, along with representatives from major symphony orchestras, music schools, and recording labels. No pressure. Maria stayed behind with Emma and Sophia. The three of them sat together in the quiet dressing room, listening to the muffled sounds of the crowd taking their seats beyond the walls. "Every seat sold out," Maria said. 2,000 people out there. That's insane." Emma closed her eyes. 2,000 people. The video of her performance at the charity ball had been viewed over 20 million times now. Her story had been featured on national news, morning talk shows, podcasts, documentaries. She had been offered recording contracts, performance opportunities, teaching positions. Some opportunities she had accepted. Others she had declined. Tonight was different. Tonight was her official debut as a professional concert pianist. Not a waitress who could play, not a viral video sensation. A real, serious musician making her mark on the classical music world. The program was carefully chosen. She would play her original composition, Morning After Rain, the piece that had started everything, then Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, third movement, then several other pieces, including a new composition she had written about Sophia's illness and recovery. The evening would end with Rachmaninoff, the same piece Victor had tried to play on the broken piano that night. Emma had titled her concert Breaking Strings, a reference both to that damaged piano and to the idea of breaking free from the constraints that had held her back. 5 minutes, Miss Martinez," came a voice over the dressing room intercom. Emma stood and took a deep breath. Sophia wheeled herself over and grabbed Emma's hand. "I'm so proud of you," Sophia said, her voice thick with emotion. "Not just for tonight, but for everything. For sacrificing so much for me. For never giving up even when things seemed impossible. For showing me what strength really looks like." Emma knelt down and hugged her sister carefully. "You've been my reason for everything. Every choice I made was worth it because it kept you alive. And now look at us. You're getting better. I'm getting to play music again. We're both going to be okay. We're going to be more than okay, Sophia said. We're going to be amazing. Maria joined the hug, and the three of them stayed like that for a long moment. Three women who had supported each other through the hardest times, who had celebrated each other's victories, who had become family not through blood but through choice and loyalty and love. Okay, enough crying, Emma said, pulling back and wiping her eyes carefully. I need to go perform now. She gave Sophia and Maria each one more quick hug, then walked toward the door. Her hands were shaking slightly, but her steps were steady. She had practiced for this moment, prepared for it, dreamed of it for years, then stopped dreaming of it when it seemed impossible, then dared to dream of it again when possibility returned. As Emma walked through the backstage corridors toward the stage entrance, she passed photographs of legendary musicians who had performed at Carnegie Hall. Rachmaninoff, Horowitz, Rubinstein, Bernstein. She was about to walk onto the same stage where giants had played. The stage manager gave her an encouraging smile. Ready, Miss Martinez? Emma nodded. Ready. The lights in the concert hall dimmed. The crowd quieted. Emma heard the announcer's voice echoing through the space. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us this evening for a very special debut performance. 3 months ago, a video went viral showing a waitress playing piano at a charity event. What many people didn't know was that the waitress, Emma Martinez, had once been one of the most promising young pianists in the country, before family tragedy forced her to abandon her musical training. Tonight, Emma returns to the world of professional music with her debut concert at Carnegie Hall. Please welcome Emma Martinez. The applause began even before Emma stepped onto the stage. When she emerged from the wings, it grew louder. The audience stood, giving her a standing ovation before she had even played a single note. Emma walked across the vast stage, her green gown flowing behind her. The grand piano waited for her, perfectly tuned, unblemished, not broken like the one that had changed her life. But Emma remembered that damaged piano fondly. It had taught her that perfection wasn't necessary. That beauty could emerge from imperfection. That sometimes the broken things are the most honest. She sat at the piano bench and adjusted it. She looked out at the sea of faces. In the front row, she could see Sophia in her wheelchair, Maria beside her. Catherine Blackwell sat nearby with the foundation board. Victor Ashford sat a few rows back, looking proud. Emma saw the mayor and his wife. The reporter, Jennifer Torres, who had written the article that started everything. The woman in the diamond necklace from that night, looking genuinely happy to be there. And scattered throughout the audience were regular people. People who had been inspired by Emma's story. Working mothers who had given up dreams. Single parents juggling multiple jobs. People who felt invisible in their own lives. They had come to see Emma not just because she could play piano, but because her story had reminded them that it's never too late. That circumstances can change. That hidden potential exists everywhere, waiting for the right moment to emerge. Emma placed her hands on the keys. The crowd settled into silence. She closed her eyes and took one final breath. Then she began to play. Morning After Rain started softly as it always did. The gentle melody that represented hope emerging after grief. Emma poured everything into those notes. All the pain of losing her parents. All the fear of almost losing Sophia. All the loneliness of those 5 years working multiple jobs and wondering if she would ever touch a piano again. All the humiliation of that night at the charity ball. All the joy of rediscovering her passion. All the gratitude for the second chance she had been given. The music flowed through her naturally now. After 3 months of intensive practice, her technique had returned, stronger than before because it was built not just on training but on life experience, on real emotion, on authentic expression. The audience listened in complete silence. Emma could feel them connecting with the music, understanding the story it told without needing words. This was what music was supposed to do, not impress people with technical perfection, but touch their hearts with truth. She finished the piece with the same gentle, fading chord she had played that first night. Again, silence filled the hall for a moment before the applause began. Emma opened her eyes and smiled at the audience. They were with her. They were ready for the journey she was about to take them on. The next 2 hours passed in what felt like both an instant and an eternity. Emma played piece after piece, each one chosen deliberately to tell part of her story. The Beethoven was fierce and passionate, representing her anger at unfair circumstances.